The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Racing Form webinar for Travers Day. This is our Travers Day handicapping session presented by NYRA Bets. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you alongside a very special panel of guests today. We have from the Daily Racing Form our national handicapper. You know the fantastic work he does both in print and on DRF TV via his Weekend Warrior column. He's Mike Watchmaker. Mike, how are you tonight?
Hi, Pete. How are you?
Life is good, man. Life is good. We're in Saratoga. The weather's beautiful. And I've been, for the last couple hours, having the pleasure of looking over these PPs that might be the best non-Breeders' Cup race card I've ever seen. So the spirits are high up here in Saratoga at the moment. Also joining us today, we have NYRA analyst. You know his work on Talking Horses. You also know him as the race caller from Churchill Downs. He's Travis Stone. Travis, how are you?
Doing well. How's everybody doing tonight?
Things are good, man. Things are good. So we have a limited amount of time in this handicapping session, and we've got 6 Grade 1 races to talk about. We're going to dive into those. If we have time at the end, we're going to have a little question and answer session. You can ask questions at any time using the webinar software. If you don't get us there, you can ask questions subsequently on Twitter, or you can hit me up at my podcast email, podcast@drf.com, and we'll try to get as many of them answered as possible. But I want to start off by diving into race 6 on Saturday. And don't get me wrong, the first 5 races are really interesting too. But for time's sake, we'll start with race 6. It's the Grade 1 personal ensign, the return to the races of Songbird, who after some seriously impressive efforts last year has been, I'll be polite and say, maybe a little underwhelming so far in 2017. Mike Watchmaker, what do you expect we're going to see from Songbird on Saturday, and what are your thoughts on the personal ensign?
Well, with the way Songbird is run in her 2 starts this year, I think under normal circumstances she would be ripe to be picked off at a short price. The problem is that she's as loose as she wants to be on the early lead in this race, and while Forever Unbridled is a very nice mare, she's really compromised by the pace setup, and the other 3 entered are just aren't serious horses in this league. So Songbird was not good when she won the Delaware Handicap, and I suppose it's probably a measure of her quality that she still won it with her C race. But she's supposed to win this race, and I would like to see her come back in a big way because she's good for the game. But if she doesn't win in giant fashion, then when she finally does run against a legitimate field and sees some base pressure, I'll be amongst many people lining up to bet against her that day.
That sounds very astute, Mike. Travis, what do you have to add in terms of your thoughts on Songbird and the ensign, maybe a betting thought as well?
I don't have much to add. I 100% agree with what Mike said. She has been a little bit underwhelming these past 2 starts. I guess there's a story out there. She might have been a little bit short for the Delaware Handicap anyway, but I sort of think that doesn't matter. I think she could bring her B- game. She's so fast early relative to the rest of these horses. There's absolutely no pace pressure. Quick run to the first turn. She's won over the track before. It's just, I hate to say it, I think it's almost a layup. And this is coming from someone who is looking forward to betting against her in this spot, because I do think Forever Unbridled is a horse that can run fast enough to beat the current form of Songbird. The problem is there's just no pace pressure whatsoever. And I think the time to maybe make some money with Songbird is going to have to be down the road.
I mentioned at the top of the webinar that we're presented tonight by NYRA Bets. I want to talk about the $200 bet and get sign-up bonus. Bet on any track from anywhere at any time by opening a NYRA Bets wagering account. Sign up today and you can earn up to a $200 new member sign-up bonus. Use the promo code DRF200 to qualify. Also, as a NYRA Bets member, you'll get exclusive access to the Saratoga NYRA Bets Late Pick 5 offered daily. NYRA Bets is available to horse players nationwide, so go to NYRA Bets and enter promo code DRF200 to instantly qualify for the Bet 200 Get 200 sign-up promotion. NYRABets.com, the official betting site for the Travers Stakes. We'll be getting to that Travers Stakes in a little bit, but before that, we're going to dive back into this Grade 1 laden card with the Ballerina. Travis, what were your thoughts on this one?
I think it's a little bit more of an interesting race, obviously, than the personal lens, and there's a little bit more going on in here. And fully recognizing that Paula Silverlining has rattled off 4 consecutive victories, including a pair of Grade 1s and a Grade 2, most recently here at Saratoga. Ultimately, though, when you look at her PPs, it is one consistent mare, but she's not exactly a triple-digit buyer type horse. In fact, she's been pretty consistent in the mid-90s, so to speak. When you poke around this field, there's a few horses in here that can run mid-90s and a few that can even run a little bit faster than that. So it's probably the first, what figures to be a shortish priced favorite I'm going to take a stab against. Karina Mia is just okay to me. I think she could probably win this race if she moves forward off that most recent start. But I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical of truly what her overall ability is, even though she was a filly. I thought a lot of at one time. There are 2 horses in here I'm actually going to probably have to lose some money on. One of them is Curlin's Approval, who's got some early gas. She's got some figures that make her competitive. Yeah, she might be a Gulfstream Park horse, might be a Florida horse, but I think she's fast enough early to maybe shake loose from this group. And I think she could be interesting at a somewhat of a square price, maybe in the 4-1 to 5-1 range. And then sort of a sneaky idea behind her and possibly on top is a Highway Star, which is a horse that outruns herself every single time. She got some form that makes her a little bit skeptical whether or not she compete with these, but she's going to be a square price. And in a race where a lot of these are sort of evenly matched and, maybe no true real standouts and an older mare that I think is a little bit vulnerable, though I respect her, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot with those 2.
Mike, how do you see this year's Ballerina?
Well, I'm sort of 50-50 with Travis here. I thought Highway Star was an interesting horse in this race off the cut back to a distance. I think that will suit her well. This race is at 7 furlongs, and I think she's interesting. I'm not with him on Curlin's Approval. I actually thought Curlin's Approval's win in the Princess Rooney last time out was offensive because she couldn't get out of her own way in her 2 prior starts. I mean, she was bad at both of those races, and I just don't know where in the world she came up with that Princess Rooney effort. And she's going to have to show me that she can do it again. Obviously, the 2 Chad Brown horses here are the main players. Paula Silverlining, I mean, she doesn't win by a lot, but she wins. And Karina Mia, I thought that was kind of just a test race with her last time out. It wasn't her best race. It was her first start for New Connections. It was sort of like to get her on the right track. And I think she's going to run a much, much better race on Saturday. I think, Paula Silverlining and Karina Mia are obvious horses, but I am intrigued like Travis is with Highway Star.
Travis, do you care to discuss for a second why you think that 104 buyer speed figure from Curlin's Approval might represent a new level of ability as opposed to being the anomaly that Mike thinks it is?
That's a fair point. It's a legitimate question. If she was going to be 2-1 or 9-5, I'd probably take the more contrarian approach with her. I think there's enough juice there to maybe offset that a little bit, but I fully recognize that she's got some question marks. But the one thing I feel like when handicapping, sometimes it's okay to accept some of these at square value, at face value, I should say, when you're going to get a price that might offset that a little bit. And I think above and beyond that, I'm sort of looking at her as a bit of a pace play as well. By the Moon has a little bit of speed, and she's more than eligible to improve second off to freshening. But I think Curlin's Approval could be loose if she wants to be, and could make for an interesting scenario if she, able to shake free. I know 7 furlongs is a tough distance to wire at, but I feel like there's going to be just enough by there to put her in the conversation.
All right, let's move on to race 8. It's the H. Allen Jerkins, the race formerly known as the King's Bishop. Mike, where were you thinking of going in here?
Well, first of all, this is a terrific race, as are several of these stakes races on Saturday. There are a lot of very likable horses in here, very talented horses and horses that you can like. that said, I'm all about practical joking here. In general, and we'll discuss this when we get to the Travers. I hated the Haskell. I thought it was a poorly run race. It was slow. The final time was slow, and I'm against the horses that come out of the Haskell, with the solitary exception of Practical Joke, and that's because Practical Joke, who was a narrowly beat third in the Haskell, was going a mile and 8 that day, and I've maintained all along, and I still believe it, even though he was narrowly beaten in the Haskell, that he is a much, much, much better, much more effective horse going in extended one-turn races, sort of like the 7 furlongs he gets here. And my proof of that is after an okay effort in the Kentucky Derby, he was an all right fifth. They ran him back in a one-turn mile in the Dwyer, and I know he didn't beat a lot that day, but he was about 4 weeks the best. I mean, he was steady on the rail going into the far turn. He was blocked on the rail nearing the stretch. He angled out of the total. His momentum was completely stopped having to angle out at that point, and he still inhaled the field of one going away. I think he's a real formidable one-turn horse, and he's going to get plenty of pace to run at in this spot. And I'm all about Practical Joke here.
Travis, how do you see it?
I'm a little bit scared now because I am as well, and all smart horse players I talked to this week are as well. And I think we're going to see Practical Joke drift down quite a bit in here. I don't blame them for trying these two-turn races, right? I mean, he ran just well enough where it teased you, and you're like, we're probably supposed to go ahead and try the Bluegrass, and then he runs second, and you're like, now we have to try the Derby, right? And he comes back to the Dwyer, runs really well in there, and I don't blame them for trying the Haskell for another grade 1, and he outran himself. I mean, I think this horse is one of the most talented 3-year-olds in the crop, and this race is 100% going to set up for him. But I don't want to discount American Anthem too much, who's obviously also very talented and capable of winning this race as well. And we see Bob Baffert all the time ship over here to Saratoga with horses like this that are just live, and they outrun themselves. Both of them are going to get a pace. They're both fast enough to win. I'm going to give the edge to Practical Joke, but I won't be surprised if we're trying to decide the Allen Jerkins between those two with a furlong to go.
All right, let's move on to the 4-go. Grade 1 again goes as race 9. This is also the start of the NYRA Bets Pick 5. Everyone's talking about racing's best bet, the NYRA Bets Late Pick 5. The Late Pick 5 at Saratoga is exclusively available for NYRA Bets customers. On Travers Day, NYRA Bets customers qualify for a $300,000 single winner payout if there's a lone winner of the Late Pick 5. You can find the details and play the NYRA Bets Pick 5 nationwide at NYRABets.com. NYRA Bets, the official betting site for the Travers Stakes. Travis, we'll keep it with you for your thoughts on the 4-go.
Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of Mind Your Biscuits. I think he's a remarkably talented horse, and obviously he's able to put it out on the racetrack as well. Here's the problem, though, and I'm sure Michael kind of recognized the same thing. There's been a lot of chatter on Twitter about it. There's absolutely no early speed in here for a grade 1 older male dirt sprint race. And Dre Fong is perfectly posted outside. He's obviously a horse that's fine at Saratoga. He's got tactical speed and early speed. And if he breaks and, let's put the antics aside from last time, let's assume that doesn't happen. As far in front as he wants to be is as far as in front he can be. There's just nobody that can go with him early. And it's going to force Joel Rosario on Mind Your Biscuits, if he wants to beat Dre Fong, to probably put Mind Your Biscuits into the game a little bit earlier than he'd like. I really poked through this field, and I tried to find someone that could go with Dre Fong. I can't do it. I don't necessarily have creative ideas. I think if I'm going to play this race, I'm going to find a couple of long shot closers that maybe can outrun their odds a little bit, sneak into third, maybe sneak into fourth. But I think this race goes through Dre Fong. Unfortunately for Mind That Biscuits, who is just a remarkable horse with a ton of talent, if he can overcome what appears to be, anyway, on paper, a pace disadvantage like this, he's even better than I thought. This is a fun race. It's a little bit dry in terms of dynamics and stuff, but we'll see.
Any specific thoughts, Travis, on that closer who could get up into third and fourth and add some juice to the Super?
Well, I mean, there's one horse that I thought, Divining Rod is kind of interesting, second off the freshman with a big second behind Connect, whom I'm a huge fan of. It's too bad we didn't get to see him finish out the year. Horses like Awesome Slew and Tommy Macho sort of consistent, one run type horses that are going to be in the 6 to 8 to 1 type range. Maybe they can juice it up a little bit. Tail Saval was a big figure last time out. Maybe he's a contender for that as well. If I'm going to do it, and that's a big if, I'm going to wait to see how the betting is going as I get closer to post time and see where the public really gravitates towards, and maybe try and find the best price of those, and just try and hit the trifecta, superfecta a couple of times on a slim, narrow ticket.
Fair enough, Mike. How do you see this one?
So this is one of the races I used in my Saturday Weekend Warrior column. I mean, it was the second one. I led with the Travers, then it was this one, and then the other one was the Jerkins and Practical Joke. I went with Divining Rod at this race. But first, let me say that I'm a big fan of Trey Fong. I have been since the very beginning. I know that he is in control of the pace, and he can absolutely win this race, as can Mind Your Biscuits, who is very strong winning the Belmont Sprint Championship, and was, 4 days the best winning the Dubai Golden Shaheen at 2 starts back. I got really kind of, maybe I'm reaching here, maybe I'm grasping at straws, but there are a couple of little knocks here. I mean, with Mind Your Biscuits, his workout, a couple of workouts ago, was not supposed to be all that good, and it put his participation in this race in doubt, and then he came back with a better workout, so he's running in this race. And bottom line, his works have kind of got like mixed reviews. And I mean, I don't want to generally read too much into things like that, but I think it's important in this case. So that kind of put me off him just a little bit. And the other thing about Trey Fong is, I mean, and this may sound nuts, but everyone knows that he dumped Mike Smith, when he shot the gap in the Bing Crosby. Now, when he did that, he lost like 120 odd pounds of live weight. Okay, and usually when you see a talented horse dump the rider, the horse goes off and runs out of the picture. Well, Trey Fong ran up and he was in between horses, riderless. And he was in between horses in the stretch after carrying a couple of opponents out starting for home. And, he didn't go on and, like, quote unquote, win that race. He wound up finishing third without a rider. And, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's nuts, but I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that he didn't actually finish many lengths in front of that field without carrying a job. So I went with Divining Rod in this race. Travis mentioned his Cigar Mile 2 starts back in his last start as a 4-year-old, was really big. I mean, he got beat, narrowly beaten by Connects, who his prior start beat Gun Runner in the Pennsylvania Derby, and in his first start this year, won the Westchester in dominant fashion, like he's going to be a major factor in the handicap division. Unfortunately, he's been retired. Divining Rod recently returned from a long layoff. He absolutely crushed a field, a nifty field, but he did it. He crushed them at Laurel in a perfect prep for this. He's ideally set up for this, and he's trained by Arnaud Delacour, who knows what it takes to win this race because he won this race last year with AP Indian. So he knows the kind of horse that it takes to win it. And I know it's splitting hairs kind of, but Divining Rod's last 2 buyers of 104 and 105 are actually better than anything Dreyfus has ever earned, and very much in the mix with Mind Your Biscuits best buyers. So I think Divining Rod, if he's close to Travis's 5 to 1 on the morning line, is actually has a puncher's chance of a square price.
It's a compelling case for Divining Rod. Let's move on to race 10. It's the Sword Dancer. Some interesting storylines percolating for this race. Mike, how do you see it developing on the racetrack?
Well, I just pray that Idaho is the 2 to 1 that Travis has him on the morning line. But I think, because in my mind, he's 2 to 5 in this race. I mean, Idaho is absolutely. I mean, he runs his best race. He runs back to that third in the King George Queen Elizabeth last time out to Enable, who just won brilliantly again today. He runs back to his win in the Hardwick 2 starts back. He runs back to a couple of his races last year. I mean, he'll lap this field. He'll lap them. I mean, this is our turf horses this year are not good, and this is a legit quality European. And I think he's better than the other European he rubbed. He's significantly better. And he came over and he won the Canadian International last fall. So, he's backed by Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore's name to ride. And I think, Idaho absolutely lays over this field.
The form of the King George certainly working out well with both Enable and Ulysses winning at York. Travis, Mike mentioned about making the morning line for this race, as you do for all the races here at Saratoga. Just curious how you attempt to make the educated guesses that you do when it comes to a race like the Sword Dancer, and of course curious to hear your thoughts on the race as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, in fact, you had stepped away from the table because I had to do these lines yesterday in the afternoon. So I was at the track and I had printed up the PPs and I was looking at it. And a good friend of mine, Nick Tamara, was there among some other people. And we were talking it through. And, everybody's like, well, Idaho's going to win. Idaho's going to win. I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then we started to look at the PPs and I got a little bit gun shy seeing a Chad Brown money multiplier second off the layoff who was second in this race last year. And then I looked at a Rupp's most recent form where he was beating 56 3/4 lengths. And then Idaho, who lost the Canadian International last year, was like, okay, I'm gonna play. I sort of copped out a little bit. The other thing is when I do these lines, I am extremely married to the points. I refuse to go above 130 points. And if horses get bet down, I'm always a little bit. I'm better off with that, I think. I feel better about that going from 2-1, say, to. I think this horse could maybe go down to 6-5, 8-5, in that, maybe even 7-5 to split that difference. I'm better off. I shouldn't say better off. I can eat that a little bit better. I would say than if I had made him 5-2 and he went off significantly shorter. I don't think our turf horses are any good. I think these are generally grade 2 horses. It's a little bit tricky. They all come out of the Bowling Green, which is not exactly the grade 1 sword dancers of yesteryear. So I think that without a doubt, it's going to be very difficult to upset these Europeans to go 1-2. I think they're pretty live to do so. I get nervous whenever there's a Chad Brown horse in the race because they always outrun their odds. This is a 5-year-old. They brought him back for another year. He had the perfect sort of tightener for this spot. He's fine going this distance of ground. And it just seems that no matter what, these Chad Brown horses always run. I won't be surprised if he tries to make a bit of a bid at some point in the latter stages of the race, but it's either Idaho or Rupp for me. I don't like just saying I'll take the Euros in any sort of race, but I'm going to take the Euros.
It does make sense when you look at the form on the page between Rupp's North American form and the very impressive form that Idaho has shown, as well as the fact of all the accomplishments that Idaho's brother Highland Reel has had on our shores. Definitely ones to press up a little bit, I think, whether you're playing the NYRA bets, late pick 5 or the pick 6 or the late pick 4 that begins with that race. That all makes perfect sense to me. Let's move on to the Travers, and I'm glad I don't think we gave the earlier grade 1 short shrift or anything, but I'm glad we went through them relatively quickly because I feel like there's a lot of meat on the bone in this grade 1 Travers. Travis, we'll start with you. First of all, to reflect on the race, to have the 3 winners of the Triple Crown races all facing off here at Saratoga, I'm just smiling as I'm even thinking about it, handicapping this race. Curious just to get your thoughts on the race as a whole, and then to dive into the specifics of your handicapping opinion here too.
Sure. You're right. There's no division in American horse racing that is more followed, loved, and appreciated than 3-year-olds, going a distance of ground on the dirt. All of our biggest races suit these horses, from the Kentucky Derby to the Preakness, the Belmont to the Travers, and then down the road in the Breeders' Cup Classic. This is awesome. I remember growing up. I grew up an hour north of Saratoga, and I used to beg my dad every year to take me to the Travers. He never wanted to deal with the crowds, and I finally convinced him one year, and we never missed one since, aside from maybe a year in college here or there. This is awesome. That being said, this is hard. There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of questions we all have to answer. What do you do with the Derby and Preakness winner, who weren't poor last time? They were dreadful last time. They were absolutely awful. And I have to wonder, are they feeling some of the effects of the Triple Crown season? Of those two, I think Cloud Computing was the more likely horse to rebound from that performance. but I'm a little bit skeptical. And when you look through his PPs, he might not be as good as we all thought he was. His Preakness was a good setup and a good trip, and he ran down Classic Empire, who did all the dirty work up top with Always Dreaming, and then he wasn't even able to run over Always Dreaming last time out. So there's one question. The other question is, what do you do with the Haskell? I don't like the Haskell. I don't like Gervin running down two distance challenged horses, in my opinion. McCracken and both Practical Joke and McCracken, as we talked about, are one-turn horses. So, you know, I felt like that was one area of the race where I was able to wrap my head around. And then you start looking through the rest of these horses, like, what do you do with Taprit? You overthink the layoff from the Belmont into this race. He was good in the Belmont. He's a good horse. He's got a lot of talent. But, you know, there's some questions whether or not he can run back to that race. And what do you do at a mile and a half, 103 figure when you cut back to a mile and a quarter? So there's, you know, that question mark. West Coast, I thought ran well in the Los Al Derby. I don't like how he lost ground on the turns. Once he straightened out, he kicked away pretty nicely. This is a much tougher field. He certainly gets a look. Ultimately, as I kept poking through this field, I landed on two opinions, one of which is might end up being wrong, and I'm fine with it. I thought Good Samaritan was awesome last time. However, he rode a good rail for much of the race. And as they say, a lot of times the best time to bet turf horses trying dirt for the first time is the first time. So I'm a little bit skeptical of his ability to do that. And it brings me to IRAP, who, you know, he was a good horse in the spring. He's run a lot of races, but they did the right thing. He was nowhere in the Derby. They freshened him up. His Ohio Derby was good. I thought his Indiana Derby was awesome. He put in a 4 or 5 wide blitz move on the far turn, didn't stop from there, kicked away to win by 5. The horse he beat, Colonel's Dark Temper, came back to win at Mountaineer. The figures are well within the range of competing in a spot like this. I like the projected trip, first flight right behind Always Dreaming. I think IRAP is the up-and-coming horse. But the sad news is I know a lot of people are picking IRAP, and I have a feeling his price is going to continue to drift down. But, you know, if there's more clever ideas out there, I'm all ears, because I find this race to be absolutely fascinating with a lot of questions that we're going to find out in 2 minutes on Saturday.
Mike, same question to you. Your general thoughts on the race and who you're selecting in here?
Well, my general thoughts on the race is I hope that this race helps us or moves us closer, if not helps us reach a decision as who the best 3-year-old in the land is, because right now I have no idea who it is. And I mean, I know that it shouldn't be Oscar Performance because this is a dirt division and he's a turf horse, so I'm talking about dirt horses. I have no idea who should be champion 3-year-old right now, and I just hope this race helps clarify the situation. You know, I agree with a lot of what Travers said. I mean, I don't want the Derby winner Always Dreaming, and I don't want the Preakness winner Clock Computing. They were, like Travers said, they were bad at the Jim Danny, and if you know, I mean, they both fired in the race, and the biggest indictment of them was that they were involved in a 3-way photo for minor awards with a horse in Pavel who had raced only once before and won a maiden sprint. I mean, you know, and so the Kentucky Derby winner was beaten by that horse. No, it was finished ahead in front of that horse, and the Preakness winner was beaten by that horse. You know, and as I noted, I thought the Haskell was a very slow race. If Tapper wins, I lose. You know, everyone knew going into the Belmont that it was a weak Belmont this year because it didn't have the Derby winner, it didn't have the Preakness winner, and everything that's happened subsequent to the Belmont seems to have only confirmed that it was a weak race. I don't care about the figure that it got. 7 of the 10 horses that Tapper beat that day have come back and run, and 6 of the 7 have lost. And the only one who won was Twisted Tom, who was life and death on his knees to get the job done at Odds-On against New York Prince in the New York Derby at Finger Lakes. So certainly, you know, the form of the Belmont has not been flattered by subsequent performances. I really like Good Samaritan here. To me, he kind of jumps off the page at me. You know, he was tremendous in the Jim Dandy, I thought, because the Jim Dandy pace, even though Computing tired and I was Dreaming tired, was really not all that remarkable. And Good Samaritan is a horse that was arguably the best 3-year-old turf horse around before he tried dirt for the first time in the Jim Dandy. And I say that knowing full well that I'm putting him above auction performance. I mean, you could make a very strong case that Good Samaritan was best when third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and he was brutally compromised by walking paces when he picked up minor awards in the Pennine Ridge and Belmont Derby. And they wanted to run this horse, Good Samaritan, on dirt for a long time, and one of the positive byproducts of that is that he was going to get more honest paces than he was going to get in those no-pace turf races. And even though the pace in the Jim Dandy wasn't fast by any stretch of the imagination, it was still faster than what he had been encountering. And he produced a devastating late kick, and he just blasted that field. Now I think he suitably stretches out distance. I think mile and a quarter is going to be perfect for him. And I don't think the pace of this race, there's not a lot of defined Derby speed in here, but I don't think the pace of this race is going to be any slower in the Jim Dandy, and it could be even a little bit quicker. To me, he's a brand new horse, Good Samaritan. And he comes off a giant win over the racetrack, and his setup is every bit as good as it was when he won that race. And I think he's absolutely the horse to beat. As for IRAP, I understand the case, making the case for him. The big issue I have with him is his Indiana Derby came at 1 mile and a 16th, and the Travers is 1 mile and a quarter, and that's apples and oranges type. Those are apples and oranges type races. I don't know that IRAP is going to like 1 mile and a quarter.
I did want to follow up on a point that Travis made. Mike, you're an astute observer of track bias, and I did agree with Travis that the July 29th racetrack here at the Spa did seem to favor horses who are running on the inside portion of the track. Do you disagree with that notion, or did you just see enough from Good Samaritan that doesn't bother you?
No, I thought it was a speed favoring track that trended towards the inside. The thing of it is that even if Good Samaritan sat on the rail for much of the trip, the move he made was away from the rail. I mean, he inhaled all those horses away from the rail. He was widest of all turning for home. So, even if it was all rail and not necessarily speed. And the other thing is, I mean, I'm a big believer in track bias. I grew up in New England, and sometimes we see the most absurd track biases you ever saw during the winter time, where, if you drew the one hole, you won, and it didn't matter what your PPs looked like. I mean, sometimes track biases in one-turn races don't necessarily carry over to two-turn races. And it's not just because of that extra turn, or maybe they don't maintain the track that well on the first turn. It's the dynamics of the races are completely different. And I'm not necessarily sold on the fact that even though I had it down as a speed as maybe inside day, that Good Samaritan benefited in any way, shape, or form from riding the rail in the early stages of the race, because, like I said, the move he made was well off the rail.
Fair point. Travis, what about Mike's idea that ERAP might not be suited to 1 mile and a quarter? What makes you think that he will be?
It's a legitimate question. I mean, I think for many of these, that question still remains. It's a sort of a unique distance. And at Saratoga, the way this meet has been going and the way horses have been coming back to the barn off what has been a fairly deep and tiring track, it's a legitimate concern. I think I might counter that with he didn't have to go through the ringer the entire Triple Crown Trail, and he was given a couple of races to sort of keep his fitness going. Tiz now is he certainly was capable of going 10 furlongs, but it's it's a very legitimate question, and one that I think you have to bake into the price a little bit and make sure you're getting enough value as to whether or not you can truly get to 10. And we'll see. And I think Mike made a really good point too with the fact that even though Good Samaritan was on the rail for much of the race, he made his move. And theoretically, if we all follow through with what we think was true on Jim Dandy Day, he made his move on a part of the track that was not the best part of the track. And so to do what he did and not the best part of the track, I think he's completely legitimate in a spot like this. And I won't be surprised if it's IRAP, Good Samaritan, IRAP, and sort of a mid-price Travers, so to speak.
I like it. We had a question from the audience. Robert wants to know why you guys both discount the Haskell as being a slow race. Mike, I'll let you start.
All you need to know is the winning buyer figure was a 95. And that's That's pretty low for a Grade 1 race for 3-year-olds in midsummer. It's just not, it's not a fast race. And, it probably couldn't have gotten any kind of a bigger number because, McCracken's never bettered at 95 in his whole career. And he came out of the race, even though he's beating the nose, he came out of the race with a 94 buyer. So, McCracken might not only be distance challenged, he's also definitely speed figure challenged at this point in his career too. So the race couldn't have been fast with the way it was run, and it wasn't.
Fair points. Travis, anything to add, or did Mike pretty much say it all there?
No, I mean, so I called McCracken at Churchill Downs throughout his 2-year-old year, and I just felt like watching him through the binoculars that when he made the lead in the stretch of these races, he was not finishing like a horse that would relish additional ground. And so my opinion on the Haspel, aside from the fact on pure figures it's slow, that was 2 horses involved in that sort of driving finish that don't want to go this far. I'm 100% convinced Practical Joke's a one-turn horse, and I am 100% McCracken is as well. And so I just can't take anyone coming out of that race, even the horse that ran them down. So, I mean, it's sort of just an opinion, and, we all have opinions, but that's my thought there.
Yeah, I think those thoughts both make perfect sense to me, and I agree with both of you on it. Let's talk about the Boston Spa really quickly. We have the return to the races of Lady Eli here. Travis, are you going to try to beat her?
I think I might be done trying to do it. I don't like the audible being called this week. To me, it's a little bit. I think one of Chad Brown's rationale behind it was, what if we wait 8 weeks until the Flower Bowl, whatever the time frame is, and it comes up rain, and she has to then ship to Keelan. Yeah, I mean, I can't forecast weather 3 days from now, much less 6 weeks, 7 weeks from now. So I'm a little bit. It sort of feels like, are Antonio and Roca Rojo doing all that well? And Chad Brown's involved in a trainer's title race, and so there's a little bit of I don't want to say smoke, but there's a little bit of steam around the scenario or the situation here. One thing I will say about this race is Dickinson is dead lone speed. The problem is she seems to have lost the form she had in the spring. I wish she had shown a little bit more recently, to possibly take her in a spot like this. And so I'll just throw in one clever idea for maybe a share. I don't know if she's good enough, but if Jose Ortiz knows what to do in this spot, he's going to send Don Lee to the front, and they're going to try and send him on a merry chase with a quick run to the first turn. But, I don't think necessarily Saturday is the day that you can totally go against Lady Eli, unless you take the idea that Antonio can turn the tables, and she certainly can. I'm just skeptical of the late entrant of Lady Eli.
Mike, what are your thoughts on the Boston Spa and how we're going to close out this all-stakes pick 6 from NYRA on Saturday?
Well, I'm in agreement with Travis. I mean, I don't like when audibles like this are called. This Boston Spa was not in Lady Eli's original plans, and boom, there she is. And I suppose the other way to take it is she's doing so great, she's kicking the barn down that they have to run her. And I suppose that's possible. The thing of it is that if you watch the Diana, a race that was a mile and 8, a true 2-turn race, and a race that might, and I stress might, have been a little bit too far for Antonio. Antonio finished third in that race, beating only a length, and she was completely shut off in the late stages of that race. And, she would have been right there with those horses at a distance that might not have been her very best. And now she's shortening up a little bit, and I think that would help her. And I think it would be kind of an awkward winner's circle picture, although we saw probably the most awkward one last week with Bob Baffert in the Pacific Classic, but it'd be kind of an awkward winner's circle picture when Chad Brown's sitting here with Antonio and Lady Eli is, gets beat. I think Antonio could definitely beat Lady Eli on the square at this shorter distance.
Yeah, she's shown a lot of talent, Antonio. That's definitely an interesting thought. I want to talk for a minute here about the Trifecta 10% winner's bonus. Every day, a selected Saratoga Stakes race earns you a 10% Trifecta winner's bonus. On Saturday, NYRA Bets will offer the winner's bonus in the Travers. With NYRA Bets, you simply win more, plain and simple. NYRA Bets is available to horse players nationwide, so go to nyrabets.com and enter the promo code DRF 200 to instantly qualify for the Bet 200, Get 200 sign-up promotion. Then on Saturday, put in a winning trifecta wager in the Travers and get an extra 10% added to your payout. Visit NYRABets.com for additional details. Just have a couple of minutes left in the show, guys, and we have a couple of questions that have rolled in. Jim wants to know, hearkening back to our discussion of the ballerina, what about By the Moon and her early speed? Do either of you consider her a major contender here?
Well, she doesn't have as much early speed as some others in here. I mean, she's got a legit speed horse. They call it Silver Lining has more speed than By the Moon does. I mean, By the Moon is a very honest, hard-hitting horse. There's nothing wrong with her. I just don't think she's as good as Paula Silver Lining, or by extension, Karina Mia.
Very sensible response. Travis, anything to add to that? If you're making letter grades for a ticket maker sequence, what would you do with By the Moon?
She's definitely not a main contender, but she would be sort of my second tier because she was only 3/4 of a length behind Paula last time. A little bit of a freshening coming in, not a long one. She's good at Saratoga. She's fine going 7. I think she's interesting enough that you have to use her in some regard.
All right. Here's a good question. You'll each take this one. I'll start with you, Travis. What is your strongest negative opinion in the late pick 5 sequence? Does a horse at the shorter end of the odds spectrum leap to mind that you will be leaving out completely?
I just don't think we're going to see Always Dreaming that we saw in the Kentucky Derby, where he rode a good rail that day, and I just feel like his better days are behind him. And unless the entire nation wakes up really smart on Saturday, I do think he's going to be single digits. He's the Kentucky Derby winner. They always get bet. I suppose there's a universe where he gets loose on the lead and he needed that last race, but I feel like we've seen this story before. I'm fine with dropping him down to even a defensive C or a toss in a late pick type sequence. But I hope I'm proven wrong, because I think it's always fun in racing when the Derby winner finds his best form again.
Mike, how about you? A horse you're looking forward to betting against in the late pick 5 sequence?
Well, I could follow Travis's lead here and say Always Dreaming and Cloud Computing. But I just don't think that they're going to be short enough prices. I mean, I think the favorite in the Travers is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 7-2, 4-1. And I mean, in a relative sense, horses like Always Dreaming, Cloud Computing will be short prices, but not in an actual market sense. That said, it pains me to say this because I am a big Lady Eli fan. You can't love the game and not love Lady Eli, but she's going to be heavily bet in that race, a race that she was not originally intended for, the Boston Stock. And I think Antono might be her equal at this shorter distance. So I'm not exactly frothing at the mouth to bet against Lady Eli, but she is at least a short price favorite who I have serious questions about.
All right, we are just about out of time. Had a question about somebody's audio going out and wanting recapped selections for a race. You can go in a few hours to drf.com/YouTube and re-listen to the whole webinar, or scrub around to the points that you missed and get all the selections again. drf.com/YouTube. You'll get a replay of this show and lots of other great content from drf.com, including some starring Mike Watchmaker and some starring me in the form of the DRF Players Podcast. So make sure to check that out. Last thing, I just want to remind everybody about the $200 bet and get sign-up bonus. Bet on any track from anywhere at any time with your NYRA Bets account. Sign up and earn up to $200 with the promo code DRF200. You'll get exclusive access to the NYRA Bets Late Pick 5. NYRA Bets is available to horse players nationwide. Enter that promo code DRF200 to instantly qualify for the Bet 200, Get 200 sign-up promotion. NYRABets.com, the official betting site for the Travers Stakes. Mike, Travis, thank you so much for your time this evening. And I hope you knock them dead at the windows this Saturday and for the rest of the Saratoga meet.
Thank you much.
Thanks, Travis.
Take care.
Cheers, gentlemen, and thank you to those guys. Thanks most of all to all of you for listening. Again, check out that replay, drf.com/YouTube. Lots of other great content there. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. You've been watching a webinar produced by drf.com.